will get a prompt just to let you know that we are now recording the webinar. Sherry just wanted to mention that, the missed time schedule. All right, everyone. So welcome. This is Maggie Woodruff from the Dallas chapter of SCORE. And we have with us Tammy Jo, who you probably have been working with closely via email about this webinar. And finally, Miss Nancy Alvarez, who is going to be the presenter. So before we start, let me go ahead and just do a quick introduction to SCORE, as well as an introduction to Nancy. And then once that happens, I'll hand it over to her. And my role then becomes just monitoring the chat as well as the Q&A tabs of your Zoom. If you look at your taskbar, there's a Q&A or chat. Feel free to ask your questions at the bottom during the presentation over there. But please note, Nancy would like to finish the whole presentation before she starts answering any questions. So to begin, I just want to let you know that founded in 1964, my goodness, SCORE is a nonprofit organization that provides free and confidential business mentoring services to both prospective and established small business owners in the United States. The Dallas chapter itself was founded 1 year later in 1965. Now, over 13,000 active and retired business professionals have volunteered and are volunteering their time and expertise that draws their experience in disciplines and industries that might be valuable to small business owners. The SCORE's mission is to foster vibrant small business communication through mentoring and education, and clients can actually access mentors for free, ongoing confidential mentoring services through phone, email, or video. In-person mentoring also is slowly coming back, so feel free to request that as well. In addition to mentoring, SCORE is also offers both free and low-cost educational workshops. SCORE is a resource partner of SBA, the United States Small Business Administration. In the case of this morning's webinar, SCORE is collaborating with SBA in bringing you critical information about the certification matrix. You'll find more information at dallas.score.org. Please take the time to browse our library, to request a mentor, or to just look at the upcoming workshops that Tammy Jo has been working hard to secure for us. So let me introduce the presenter of your workshop or webinar today, Nancy Alvarez. Since 2011, Nancy serves as the head of the 8A Business Development Program for the SBA Dallas-Fort Worth District Office. She is instrumental in providing leadership, management, and oversight to optimize the deployment of SBA's federal contracting programs, and she serves the small business communities within a 72 county geographic area in North Texas. As the SBA's Women's Ownership Business Representative, she's responsible for increasing participation of women-owned businesses in federal contracting programs. Nancy graduated from Jacksonville University with a bachelor's degree in business administration. She's a member of Phi Beta Kappa Honor. She serves on the board of the City of Jacksonville Mayors. She had served in the City of Jacksonville Mayor's Hispanic American Advisory Board and the Mayor's Small and Emerging Business Advisory Board. Additionally, she served as an advisory board member of the Beaver Street Enterprise Center, Jacksonville's first business incubator. She currently is an advisory board member of the Dallas-Fort Worth Federal Agency Small Business Advocacy Council, FASBAC, a small business professionals forum, where federal agencies gather to share and create ideas that promote small businesses' interest and participation in the federal marketplace. So without further ado, let me introduce and turn over this workshop to Nancy. Nancy?
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here again. Let me thank the SCORE for having me presenting today, and also for suggesting this workshop. This is the first time I kind of set up a workshop in this fashion. So let me go ahead and bring up the presentation. Let's see. It's asking me, what can I share? And it's given me all panelists or hosts. So I'm going to say all panelists,
All
right?
panelists. No.
Okay. See the bottom one. So it's not letting me right now share. Oh, no, okay. Now it is. Thank you. So sorry. Here. All right. Let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
All right. Let me make this a little larger here for some reason. Oops. There you go. Hopefully you're able to see the presentation now, right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So let's get started. First and foremost, so we came up with the idea of
Nancy, just to let you know, it's showing the screen where it has your slide and then the next slide. So you're not in slideshow mode.
Okay, let's change that. We want to change that. How is that?
Nope. Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Perfect. All right. And let me move this out the way. All right. So we decided to name this certification matrix and selling to the federal government. And the idea here is to help you understand the different certifications, the role they play in helping you do business, not only with the federal government, but with the private sector, with the state and local government. So if you're interested in growing your business and are looking for other sources of revenue, this would be an ideal class, an introduction to understanding number one, how the government works, and number two, all these certifications that you probably hear people say, are you certified? So let's start with understanding a little bit certification. And when I was putting this together, I thought about certifications and the other term, which is supplier diversity. And it's kind of a way to understand how supplier diversity is almost identical to certification. So the definition of supplier diversity is a business strategy that drives the inclusion of diverse owned businesses in the procurement of goods and services within an organization. By contrast, if you look at federal certification and these small business set-aside programs, Public Law 9505 amended the Small Business Investment Act to include underrepresented groups of government purchases. Corporations across industries are intentionally creating inclusive supply chains to promote economic growth within diverse communities. So now you can see how the government, which has these programs where they reserve procurement opportunities for small businesses to a certain degree, is almost equal to the supply diversity, where the private sector now is moving into this trend to create opportunities where they make small businesses more inclusive. So let's take kind of a different approach in how we look at certifications. And on the right-hand side, I just put the different driver's license, right? Driver's license is just a permit, right? A permit to drive. And certifications is sort of like a permit, can be looked at as sort of a permit to also do business with the federal, state, and local government, although it's not necessarily considered a license. It's just really a certification. So in looking at the different drivers categories, if you want to drive a vehicle that is less than 26,000 pounds, you can have a Schedule 1 or a Class 1. Most of us have a Schedule 1. If you want to drive vehicles between 26,000 pounds and 10,000, you would get a Class B, and certainly anything over the 26,000 that exceeds the 10,000 pounds, you need a Class A. And lastly, so you also need a Class M to drive a motorcycle. So in the same fashion, if you want to do business with the federal, state, local government, or the private sector, you're going to need some sort of certification if you want to participate in this supplier diversity class, or again, on these set-aside programs. It doesn't mean that you have to get certified. It just means that if you get certified, you get to compete with other like-minded small businesses. You're not just competing with everyone out there. So, and that's kind of the the broader picture, right? And so I added this because, one size does not fit all. One certification does not fit all. You probably hear people say SBE, DBE, WBE, Hub Zone, STVOSB, and all these certifications can get confusing. And so I'm going to help you understand a better way to look at certifications, and then put everything into perspective and decide, which one's the certification that is probably right for you. So non-federal certification programs, the differences. Well, the differences between the federal certifications and, let's say, a Supplier Diversity program is that, number one, there is no statutory goal in Supplier Diversity program. Supplier Diversity programs will set up goals that they want to achieve, but they are not ordered or they are not mandated by law like federal the federal procurement small business goals, where by law the government has to reserve a certain percentage of federal contracting opportunities for small business. Also, in Supplier Diversity, there are really no true set-asides. When I'm talking about a true set-aside is in the federal contracting arena, the federal government reserves opportunities strictly for competition among small business. And those contracting opportunities are for small business as a prime contractor. So these are not sub opportunities. These are true set-aside. In Supplier Diversity, those set-asides are primarily kind of like a prime sub relation, which I highlight at the bottom, where they are reserving a percentage of contracting dollars that are going to be awarded through small businesses or to small businesses through prime contractors. So not necessarily that a small business gets to be a prime, but that they sub work or that they get a contract awarded through them through one of the larger businesses. And also they resemble subcontracting, just like I was explaining, because again, it's the prime who is subbing out a percentage that was basically stated in the contract for them to sub out work to small businesses. So that's kind of in a nutshell how you look at this. Now, I provided the SCORE chapter a copy of the certification matrix. The one I have on the screen is not the latest, but the one that I did mail to the SCORE counselors is the latest and greatest matrix, and it is updated. And what we did is we created this matrix to kind of help people understand how to look at these certifications. So what we did is divided them at the top, at the last blue right here, all certifications under this blue one, this blue ribbon are federal certifications. And then we kind of knock these and highlight in green private sector certifications, or those certifications that can be used at the private sector. We have another heading here for regional government certifications, and then state and local government certifications right here in the middle. You're going to see on the left-hand side that it will highlight the agency, the point of contact for that certification, the address for the office. There's a phone number, a website, and then certainly the criteria, the qualifying criteria for that specific certification. You'll also get information on how to apply, about the time frame, and if there is a cost. There is no cost for our federal certification. So you can certainly, there is one or two that you can self-certify, and then the other ones you would apply through the SBA. For the women-owned certification, you can use a third-party certifier like the Women's Business Council. They do charge a fee, but this fee is for the membership. And so with that membership comes some benefits. You would have to evaluate yourself whether or not the benefits outweigh the cost of the membership, okay? But with that membership, you get certifications. That's part of the package for them. On the next page of the certification matrix, you will get some headings here. Primarily, I want to highlight the bottom one. And although it's not inclusive, I attempted to highlight who will accept your certification. Again, it's not all inclusive. For example, here on the private sector, these are companies that are members of WeBank. So certainly, if you want to do business with any of these, if the one that the private sector organization you would like to do business with is not here, maybe you might want to call WeBank and just find out whether or not that company has a Supplier Diversity program and they are a member of WeBank. Otherwise, then you'll have most of the cities are going to fall under the regional certification, and they'll certainly accept some of these, and that will be highlighted on the matrix. So you'll be able to kind of determine who's accepting. But we're going to focus on the federal certification because we're talking about federal small business programs, and we're going to talk about how to do business with the federal government or how to sell to the government. So for our program, certainly all our certification, all our federal certifications will be accepted by federal agencies. Okay, so let's move on now to talk about selling to the government, right? Because this is important. And the most important thing that I want to highlight is that the federal government is the largest buyer of goods and services in the world. Yearly, we buy over $600 billion of goods and services. Take into consideration that 23% of those government purchases must be reserved to be doing business with the federal government. Now, how does the federal government buy? Well, the government buys in 3 different ways. They could go out and they could do a full and open competition where anyone can submit a proposal to get submit a proposal, excuse me, for that particular award or for that particular requirement. Also, the government can award through a small business set aside, where they will reserve that contracting opportunity for small businesses, and only small businesses certified may provide or may submit a proposal for that particular requirement. And lastly, under certain circumstances, the government can award a sole source contract. That means that it's not awarded, and it has to meet certain guidelines. So you can either participate in a program like the 8A Business Development Program, where you can be awarded a sole source, or there are other programs, or there are other mandates that will allow the government to award a contract on a small business, to a small business on a sole source basis. Targeted small business set aside. So by law, remember I started saying, by law, the government has to reserve a certain percentage of contracting dollars for small businesses. The main goal is 23%. 23% is reserved to do business with those companies that have certified themselves as small. There are 4 other categories. There's a 5% statutory goal for those small businesses certified as women-owned small businesses, another 5% to those businesses certified under the small disadvantaged business. This includes those companies also certified under the 8A Business Development Program. And a quick note on this particular category is that this administration has submitted a proposal to increase the small disadvantage goal, the 5% to 15% by the year 2025. There is also a 3% goal for those companies certified in the historically underutilized business zone program, not to be confused with the state of Texas hub program, 2 different programs. The hub for the state of Texas is a state program, and the hub zone is a federal program. And lastly, there is a 3% for those companies certified as service disabled veteran-owned small business. Of note, set-asides are reserved for small businesses between the range of $3,500 and $250,000. They're called thresholds. They're called the micro purchase, and we're going to talk a little bit about the thresholds. And simplified acquisition is anywhere between, again, over the 10,000 to 250. Those purchases are automatically reserved for small business. So, and that's important to know as you set up your strategy to try to do business with the government, right? Depends in what quantities you're trying to provide for the government, because you can't start off providing the government let's say, goods and services in the amounts of maybe $10 million or, $10 million or greater, because you don't have that capacity. So we're going to talk about those thresholds and how you can position yourself depending on where you are. But I just want to give you a brief highlight of what the government has been able to achieve over the past several years. And most importantly, I want to highlight that the federal government exceeded the small business contracting goal for 8 consecutive years. So if you look at our bars here, the light blue bar indicates where where those percentages are. The blue bars represent the amount of contracting dollars that have been set aside, and the gray represents the total dollars that have been available. Okay, so it's important to know. In our red marking here, or red bar, is just the 23% goal. So it represents the 23, and the lines represent at the top every year where we've landed. Notice that in 2019, we were able to achieve a 26.50. So we went over the 23%. And certainly in 2020, we achieved a 26.01. So a little less than what we achieved in 2013, but we're making strides here. We're moving along. In terms of other awards or other highlights here, we awarded a record-breaking $145.7 billion in prime contracts. Again, this is prime contracting dollars going to small businesses. There's also a 26.01, as I stated earlier, in 2020, eligible dollars that went to small business, and over 69,000 small business received contracts as prime contractors. And the average dollar awarded to a small business is $2.1 million per firm. So again, we're making strides. We're making sure that small businesses can participate. These are some of the other goals that we've been able to achieve. So our programs certainly are achieving what we are trying to, which is increase opportunities for small businesses. And so these are primary methods of contracting. And the reason why this is important, again, is because if you're a smaller business looking for opportunities in less than 10,000, so let's say you provide a product and potentially you can fulfill an order of less than $10,000, then you don't want to go and pursue simplified acquisition opportunities, or you don't want to go into seal bidding, although they can have seal bidding in smaller. But if it's going to be a micro purchase, you must use a credit card. So the government uses credit cards. So again, micro purchases are anything that the government can buy below 10,000, and they'll use a credit card. If it's between, if it's over 3,500, or actually I think it's 10,000. So I do apologize if I don't have these numbers correctly. You can find them also in the Federal Acquisition Regulation. They recently went up. I want to say it's 10,000, the new threshold. 10,000 between 250 is simplified acquisition. This is just a simpler way for the government to acquire goods and services, and it's fairly easy for small businesses to be able to submit a proposal on that. You can also submit a sealed bid. This is used when the government has a need for a service or supplies that is clear, specific, and complete. There's no need to negotiate. You can strictly submit your sealed bidding. It's based on price, and certainly it's going to be awarded to the lowest bidder. And lastly, for those contracting opportunities that are technical in nature, that are over $150,000, there might be the need for negotiations, again, because it's technical in nature, and it might require the government to go back and forth so that you all can set a price that is reasonable. That's done when it's more technical in nature and it's over $150,000, and that's called contract by negotiations. So you can find any opportunity over $150,000 in the system for award management, and we're going to talk later about the system for award management. But so let's look again at this terminology of prime and subcontracting, because again, remember that I mentioned that subcontracting opportunities are for small business as prime contractors. So this is not necessarily the case in supplier diversity, but still you have an opportunity to be awarded a subcontractor if you are playing in the supplier diversity arena, where if you're in the federal arena, you can be awarded a contract as a prime. And a prime contractor is a person who has entered into a prime contract with the US government. A subcontractor is a person or a business that is awarded a subcontractor to provide supplies or services necessary in the performance of another's contract or another business contract. But that contract must be a federal contract. In other words, the prime contractor received a federal contract, and you as a subcontract, you would be a subcontractor to that federal contract. So these are two types of opportunities that you can still encounter here. The subcontracting opportunity program, I usually refer to those small businesses that maybe don't have past performance in the federal government, and they're trying to build their capacity and their experience. They would be better off maybe participating in this subcontracting program, where you would find primes that are subbing out work to small businesses. But if you have the performance, if you have the financial and technical capacity to perform as a prime, I would encourage you certainly to pursue those prime contracting opportunities. So let's go to our next one here. Consider, again, subcontracting opportunities if you're interested in building your capacity. If you've never landed a prime contract before, this might be an easy way for you to eventually land a contract as a prime contractor. Also, you might want to work with primes, okay? You can form teaming agreements, you can form joint venture agreements, or you can engage in what's called a mentor-protege program as a way, again, to developing your capacity to perform as a prime. In a teaming agreement, this is just an agreement between you and the prime where you will supply specific goods or services. In a joint venture is considered a separate legal entity where the government can award a contract to the joint venture. So if you partner with another business and form a joint venture, now the government considers the capacity of both companies when they are awarding to the joint venture. And lastly, mentor-protege is just another way to develop your business. It's an agreement between you and your mentor. This is also a great strategy if you're joint venturing with a large business, because a large business would be deemed other than small. In other words, not small to compete in the small business arena. So if you form a joint venture with a large business and it's not under a mentor-protege, your joint venture is going to be deemed large and not qualify for that small business set aside. But if you engage in a mentor-protege with your large mentor and you pursue contracting opportunities, this mentor-protege kind of shields the joint venture from being deemed large. Okay, so again, a lot of benefits there. And you know, the benefits of joint venturing with a large business. You have the backing, the name backing, you have the reputation of a large business, you have their past performance, etc. There's a lot of benefits of joint venturing with a large business. So you can look at that. Also, subcontracting opportunities can also help you improve and gain experience as a prime or eventually for a prime. And it can expand your opportunities. You can start doing opportunities with other small business and eventually end up being awarded a large contract. So if so far you like what you hear and you want to do business with the federal government, it's important for you to understand how to market your business to the federal government, and then also how to identify those opportunities. And the first thing that I am going to encourage you to do is to know what agencies buy your product and services. There is a website out there, and if one of the SCORE ladies can help me out and type this in the chat for you, the website where you can do a market research is www.fpds.gov, and that's F for federal, okay, P for procurement, D for database, and S for system, and .gov. That is a free website. That website is where the government posts the contracts that have been awarded. So you can do a market research using your NAICS code and see what the government is buying and what quantities and the type of contracts that are being used, so that then you know, for example, if the product that you're trying to supply is mostly acquired through GSA, the General Services Administration, what's called the schedule, then you might want to pursue getting on the GSA schedule. So again, understanding of a lot of these things is just going to minimize the amount of time that it's going to take you to enter into this marketplace, okay? Find your niche, okay? You know, the federal government can be competitive, even if you're competing for a small business set aside. There are a lot of small businesses out there trying to compete for these contracting opportunities. So when you're doing your market research, try to find a niche. For example, you can try to identify how well, if you're, let's say, if you're a women-owned small business, you're certified as a women-owned, and you notice that there are 3 agencies buying what you have to offer, and one of those 3 agencies has not been able to achieve their women-owned small business goal, then perhaps there's your niche. Try to market to that agency, because guess what? They're going to try to meet their women-owned small business goals. So they're going to be looking to award to a women, or to women, excuse me. Also, understand area of government spending. There might be opportunities for you where maybe there isn't large quantities being acquired of what you have to provide, but there is another product or a service that it's not too far from what you do, that you might be able to provide to the government. And that's a way for you to also diversify your products. So again, this also offers you the opportunity to diversify your product or services. Know your competition and their contracts. When you do use this database to find out the products, there's also going to be a listing of who got awarded those contracts. So you can start understanding and doing a little bit more market research on who your competition is. Remember that if it's a follow-on contract, meaning if it's a contract that the government renews every 5 years, then you might want to make sure that the next time around when it's out for proposal, you can beat whoever's performing on that contract. So some great insight. This slide right here identifies, you know, the different people that you're going to that you are going to come across in your attempts to sell to the federal government. There's what we call influencers, and influencers can be a group of experts in the subject. So let's say if this has to do with engineering and the acquisition of engineering services, some of your influencers might be an engineer, and people with expertise in that area. Then you have the small business specialist, and the small business specialist is usually an individual working for the agency whose job is to make sure that they increase the opportunities for small business. So when they are looking and they are getting together with the federal agencies and determining an acquisition strategy for that particular contract, most often the small business is going to be an advocate to reserve it for a small business, to reserve it for a women-owned, a hub zone, et cetera, et cetera. Then you also have SBA point of contact. Most of the time, they're going to be your PCRs, procurement center representatives, which their job is also to kind of steer some of these contracts to different SBA certification categories: women-owned, hub zone, 8A, service disabled veterans, small disadvantaged business. Again, that's their job. So they're constantly negotiating their goals with the government, as well as trying to identify those opportunities that might be great match for small businesses. Then you have the buyer and the end user, and the buyer is the individual who's actually doing the purchase for the end user. Usually this is the contracting officer, and certainly the end user, and the end user has a lot of influence because he's the one that's going to use it, right? So he knows what he wants. So it's good for you to understand who you are working with when you approach the federal government, because that gives you an idea, okay, the potential weight that that person's going to carry in convincing the buyer, okay, to utilize a small business or to utilize a women-owned or a hub zone, et cetera, et cetera. So getting a clear understanding of who these people are and these titles and what they do is important as you're going to do your market research and you start marketing directly to the federal agencies. Ingredients to making a favorable impression, and we know the saying, right? First impressions. So it's the same thing with the federal government. And here's some helpful tips. Be familiar with the agency you are targeting. There is a website that it's actually www.acquisition.gov. www.acquisition.gov. That website will give you a listing of agencies and their websites. And most often their link to the website will direct you specifically to doing business with that agency, which will discuss the About Us. When you visit their website, read their About Us so that you can understand what the agency buys, what their mission is, okay? So that when you're out there directly speaking to the agency and marketing yourself, you can position yourself in a better way. You should position yourself in a way where you're helping the agency understand how you can help them achieve their mission and objectives, okay? Be prepared to deliver a concise elevator speech. If you don't have a counselor, work with a counselor to help you craft an elevator speech. That shouldn't take you anywhere. Elevator speech should be about 5 minutes where you're able to impact the person you're targeting with key information that's going to want them to go looking for more information on you, okay? Present a business card with your certifications. If you have a business card and your business card is empty in the back, you're not maximizing your business card. Use your back of your card to either include your NAICS code or your certifications. This is going to be key because when you're out there marketing, you're always going to leave a business card. And the agencies, when they're looking for someone, they could just look at the back and know what specific certifications and what NAICS codes you're working in. And lastly, have a capability statement including your with your NAICS codes. This is very important. We're going to talk about capability statement. What is a capability statement? Why is it so important? Because a capability statement, or the terminology capability statement for the federal government, is the equivalent of a brochure in the private sector. So it basically states your purpose of qualifications, because it will include your qualifications and information in yourself. It will also work as an introduction, a way to introduce your company. It also a marketing tool because it can open doors as you use this, capability statement. It also can captivate your customers if you specifically target certain agencies and you tweak your capability statement for that agency. Also, what is it? Well, nothing else than a resume. It's pretty equivalent to a personal resume. It's just a business resume in this instance. And it's also a way to build a relationship with the agencies and potential buyers or potential, partners that you want to engage in a joint venture teaming agreement. So you can see a number 4, which discusses how to use. Again, you can use it to reach out to prime or teaming opportunities, highlight what your opportunities, and address that you are open to exploring, a joint venture or teaming agreement. It can also be used to respond to a federal government sources sought, which is a request for information on who would be interested and whether you have a certification. And this is just a way that the government is able to say, I am reserving this opportunity for women-owned, because most of the women or most of the small businesses that expressed an interest were women. So again, sources sought, and you can include it in your respond to your sources sought or request for information respond, which again, it's another way that the government requests information. They're called RIS, or again, sources sought. You respond, you attach your capability statement, and you answer the additional questions they might have in that specific requirement. The core elements of a capability statement includes the title. Please make sure that you include the title capability statement, because the government will understand that you are speaking their language. Include your logo if you can, if you have a logo. Also, any other branding element would be ideal for your capability statement. It should be a one-page document, by the way. And we're going to talk a little bit more about formatting, but you should include corporate information, any company data, like your NAICS codes. We don't use DUNS anymore, so I need to update this to include what's called now a unified entity identification code. You can also include your NAICS codes, your CAGE code. If you have GSA Schedule, you should include that. If you Google capability statement, it will give you some great images on some of the capability statements out there. You can also include your past performance. This would be a great way to kind of catching somebody's eyes at looking specifically for something. And there's some other unique features that you can include. One helpful tip, if you can create like a short 3-minute video clip of your company, do that, and then include a link on your capability statement. Here's some helpful tips. Keep it to a one page. You can use the front and back. Make it visually appealing, so shy away from these really dark colors or colors that can be considered more kind of aggressive colors. So you want to keep it soft. Again, include links to your LinkedIn or YouTube if you have. So you can use bullets and tables in your capability statement. Make sure that you have somebody check your capability statement, reach out to SCORE or any counselor that you are working with and have them critique it and check for spelling and grammar. Also, add differentiators and past performance. Those are key, really important in your capability statement. And if you are targeting a specific product, use the government lingo so that they understand that the language, and there's not going to be a learning process. Key to a successful meeting: request a meeting. Don't be shy, don't be afraid. Hey, send them an email with your capability statement. Do your homework before you do that. Make sure you understand the agency, their needs, their mission and vision. This is all important because this is all going to go into your marketing efforts. Give the specific reasons why you're requesting the meeting. I like to introduce my company, et cetera, et cetera. All I need is, 30 minutes of your time. And deliver on that. Be prepared to deliver your message in that amount of time. Conduct a pre-meeting research. So keep track of past, current, and future opportunities, and make sure that you discuss any opportunities that you identify that are maybe future opportunity or past opportunity, and how you can position yourself for those opportunities. And then after the meeting, make sure that you follow up. If you made promises, keep them and deliver. Write a thank you note. Send the contracting officer or the small business person that you're meeting with a thank you note, thanking them for the opportunity to meet with them. And then follow up later on in future months, because there might not be something for you readily available, but maybe 3 or 5 or 6 months down the road, there might be. So if you send them a postcard or a kind of reminder, a thank you note, or something every 3 or 4 months, when the opportunity arises, they're going to remember your company. Write a government marketing plan. First and foremost, the government works by fiscal year, and our fiscal year starts in October and closes in September. And there is a reason for this madness, right? When it comes to marketing, your first quarter of the government, October, November, December, you should focus on raising awareness and connecting with the agencies and building these relationships. excuse me, it's important during this quarter. During the second quarter, then you can do lead generation campaigns and respond, okay, and stay in touch, and this back and forth that's going to go on in you building this relationship. And lastly, the fourth quarter is where the opportunities come. The last 3 months of the fiscal year, the government knows that they only have 3 months to get rid of the fundings that they were approved to spend. And if they don't use it, guess what? They're not going to have them available next year. So if you market it early and you raise awareness and build those relationships and did your lead generating campaign, you might get a call at this point from a federal agency who is concerned that they're not going to find a small business last minute to award them a contract. So be prepared. Speak the government language. I know we use a lot of acronyms. Familiarize with yourself with some of them. Primarily if you're in a specific industry, in the government uses specific language to highlight a specific product or service. Rework your message again. Make sure that you are using this government lingo. Ask questions, don't be afraid, because asking questions will help you better prepare to market in the future. List contracting vehicles that you identified or that you might have, that a contract opportunity is coming up and that you specifically hold. Stress contracting expertise. If you have some past performance or you have specific expertise to help them in this area, remember sometimes the government has not been exposed to maybe a new product or service. And if you feel that that product brings better value to the government, then be prepared to share that information with the government. And then again, remember to prove your message. Remember to kind of practice what you are going to, what you're going to say in these marketing approaches. How to find the decision makers, again, use the federal procurement database system, the website I shared with you before that will include the contact information for some of these buyers as well as contracting officers. Also, under the acquisition.gov website, there's what's called the procurement forecast. This is where the government will publish in advance the opportunities that they are considering that they're going to acquire, and the name and contact information and the vehicle that they're going to use will all be highlighted on that table, including the point of contact, the name, email address. So that gives you some great information inside there that you can start marketing that agency early on. Network and contact the small business specialists. And again, remember to follow up. And lastly, don't be afraid to submit opportunity proposals. You might not get the first 10 ones that you submit, but what you're doing is you're building on your capacity to be able to respond to these proposals. So, practice, use them. How can the government help in this process? Well, there are tons of assistance that you can find in the federal government. There's small business resources. Here's a link. I think you're going to get a copy of this, so you can just click on the link and it'll take you to some of these resources. So don't be afraid to contact them. There is no charge to reaching out to a lot of these resources. As a matter of fact, I don't have none here listed that will charge for the counseling. So please don't hesitate to reach in to ask any questions, because there's a lot of information out there. I believe that I have 2 more slides and we'll be done and we'll open it up. And I do apologize if you want to do business and get in the GSA schedule. That's like an open contract. It's a great way to do business with the federal government, an easy way. To get started, you'll need to register in SAM. Request a unique identifier. You'll also need to get a cage code and get your profile active before you can proceed. And so we used to have the system called FBO. It has transitioned now into SAM. So you can go to SAM. Even if you type FBO, it'll take you to SAM. But this is where you find the federal contracting opportunities. So visit that website for the opportunities. Get to work. Again, don't be afraid to submit proposals. If you don't get it, you can actually contact the agency and request a debriefing and say, can you tell me where my weak points? That will help you prepare for a future opportunity that you need to respond. And that comes to the end of the presentation. Just want to highlight before I turn it over to our SCORE person to follow us on any of the social media websites. I'm also in LinkedIn. You can connect with me, and I'm going to open it up for questions at this point.
All right. Thanks, Nancy. That was a lot of great information. So I do have a couple of questions from the chat. The first one is from Jeff, and he's asking, is teaming agreement the same as having a subcontracting agreement?
Not necessarily, although the terms seem very similar. In a teaming agreement, the teaming agreement just basically states that for this particular requirement, that they are going to acquire the goods and services from whoever that teaming agreement is with. Okay, so in a subcontract, yeah, the subcontract would specific, but in a subcontract, there's a little bit more formality to the subcontract where, you know, you're submitting a specific proposal. And with a teaming agreement, they're basically going to you, because in a teaming agreement, there might be a requirement where the goods and services aren't specifically designed at first, right? You're going to get a task order as the need arises from the government. And so that teaming agreement basically that you have with the other company basically states, I'm going to be your supplier for this contract. So hopefully that helps.
All right. And then another one is, are we, from Yvette, she's asking, are we allowed to send a small gift with a thank you note after a meeting, or does this violate a law?
That is such a great question. You know, in government, we have ethic rules. And as a matter of fact, we're all required by law, to take these mandatory ethic classes. And so the ethic training highlights that we should not be accepting gifts. So I know this is common practice in the private sector, but in the government, they prefer you do not do it. If you do, it can be a small gift, like I know I've received, for example, calendars, something like this, where it's a magnet and you attach it to your refrigerator, something like that, that it's not significant in value, it is okay. But a gift per se, where it starts going and exceeding, the $10 mark, you don't want to go there. Most likely they will return it because, again, they're concerned that it might violate ethics, and they just don't want to cross that path. So again, we don't get offended when people just send us a thank you note and do not send us a gift, because that's not the common practice in the federal government.
Okay, so Jeff also has two more questions. What is the procedure to get on a GSA schedule, and what is the fast track procedure for 8A certification?
So the first one on GSA and getting on the GSA schedule, it is a process. I understand that it can be a lengthy process. There's a lot of paperwork because you are basically disclosing in advance your pricing to the federal government. Usually that pricing that you're disclosing includes a discount. So once you set up your schedule with pricing, and you are accepted in a schedule, then all the GSA does is anytime a federal agency approaches GSA with the need for a product or a service, they issue you a task order, and then you basically either accept or decline that task order to certainly either deliver a product or deliver on services that are being requested. So that's number one on GSA. So contact the GSA for more information on that. And if you do not have if you can't find the contact for GSA, I will be more than happy to provide that to you. Just send me an email and I'll be more than happy to give you the contact at GSA. But we do have a local GSA person. His name is Albert Garza. Okay. The second part of the question, which is the 8A, fast track to 8A. sorry to say that there is no fast track. We have been conducting these walkthroughs. It's a better way to kind of go through the application part by part and making it easier for people to understand and make less mistakes. Because, you know, the 8A application is not simple in that, yeah, they might request some information that you submit. It might be obvious to you, but SBA is looking for certain things. So for example, if they look for the potential for control, they're going to be looking at who your employees are. You know, they're going to ask you whether somebody in your management company was ever a supervisor or is a family related. Again, so these aren't things that aren't necessarily disclosed in your application, but things that SBA finds in determining eligibility. So if you stick with one of these walkthroughs, it's just easier for us to answer maybe some of those questions that might come up that, you know, that we understand that usually it raises some concerns for small businesses and their applications get turned back. So probably that's the easiest and the fastest way to kind of go through it. Okay. Next question.
Thanks, Nancy. Yeah. So since we started at 5 minutes after the hour, we'll keep going until 11:05 as well. So I have 3 more questions that have come up, I think. What about identifying your NAICS code from Gloria?
Oh, that's a great question. So number one, you can do that when you start registering in SAM, because it's going to give you a link to identify your NAICS code, or you can go to the Census Bureau and type in the keyword for the NAICS and then look at the description. Make sure that you read the description. Another way is if you've been in business for a while, your accountant, if you have your accountant doing your taxes, your accountant selected your NAICS code. Most of the time, it's not the right NAICS code. So look at your tax return, look at what number they use for you, and then look at the definition of that code. And if it's not the right one, make sure that you change it. Because for example, if you're gonna apply for the 8A program, it's going to create some conflicts if you show, for example, invoices on a type of work and that's not the matching NAICS codes. So that's one example of the complications of NAICS codes and making sure you select the right one. And also, of course, some of the resources that I listed, you know, can help you select. The other one last way to find is when you're doing your market research on the federal procurement database system, you can use keywords. If you use a keyword, you can usually find NAICS codes that are being used for that particular type of work or industry.
And is there a limit of the number of NAICS codes you can have?
No, as long as you're performing on it, we use one primary NAICS code. You should use your primary NAICS code is the one where most of your revenues are derived from. And then, you know, people sometimes have 20 secondary codes. These are just additional things that they use in their business, and that's allowable. It's permittable to do. You can certainly do that.
All right. And can minority-owned businesses with ITIN owners but EIN qualified to sell to the government?
Okay, so let's go through the question, because again, minority owned is not a certification. It's not a federal certification. That's kind of a private certification. So they listed something. Can you repeat the first part of that?
Can minority-owned business with ITIN owners?
Oh, ITIN. Okay. And the last part of the question is, can they participate?
But EIN qualified to sell to the government.
Yes, you can. You can do full and open. You might, depending on your status, you might not be able to compete on the small business set aside. So again, just make sure that you meet the definition of small business size. And it says your company must be owned at least 51 by US citizens. So there could be a combination, but as long as 51%. Okay, that's for set aside. Now, if you want to compete in the open market, then you can compete with your ITIN.
Okay, good. And then Jeff came back and just said by fast track. Remember, he asked the fast track for the 8A certification. Jeff wanted to clarify, by fast track, he meant to get around the 2-year requirement and gross income requirement.
Oh, good. See the importance of talking the government lingo. It's called the 2-year waiver. Yes, the 2-year waiver, you can. Now, there's a provision right now that indicates that if you haven't generated revenues in let's say in the past year, that you can't apply for the 2-year waiver. So you must have generated revenues some sort. So in other words, you can't just start a business today, request a 2-year waivers if you haven't generated revenue. So that's very important. Okay, and if you need more information on that, please call our office. We do have 2 specialists there that can go a little bit more in detail into this 2-year waiver and the requirement. There are 5 elements that you must address. You can reach out to Kevin Sloan or Sean Smith.
And just as a plug-in, I know that we've had the 8A certification webinars with Sean in previous months ago, but I believe they're also going to start another one coming up soon. So
I believe, yes, there's a 4-day or 5-day walkthrough. So we take the application and we split it in days.
yes,
and
exactly.
I think there is a series of walkthrough sessions coming up now for the month of May. So
Yeah,
they might want to
exactly.
look at the SCORE calendar, because they'll be listed in the SCORE calendar.
Yes, Jeff. So if you want to look at the dallas.score.org workshop, there is in May. It's an introduction. I believe it's an introduction in a 4-part series on 8A certification where Sean goes through. It's once a week for 5 weeks. That might be
Correct.
very
Yeah,
good.
you're correct. And the first day, that it's 5 days, but the first day is an introduction. It's an overview of the program, what to expect, and how to prepare for the 4 days following, where we're going to take you through the whole application. So you should be registered in SAM by the time we start the class, because the idea is to help you go through the application on the spot. So you have to have your SAM registration and you have to have your SBA account already ready to go.
All right. Well, that concludes this webinar. Sorry, we went a little bit over, but we did start a little bit later, waiting to make sure that everybody could join us. As a reminder, the recording of this webinar, as well as the certification matrix and the presentation that Nancy just shared, will be sent over to everybody, and via email by Tammy Jo, and I'm sure she'll have a survey. So please share with Nancy and the Dallas SCORE chapter what you thought about the webinar. And I think this is an awesome one. We may have to invite you to do it again, Nancy.
Love to.
All right. Well, have a great day, rest of your day, and time to go to lunch. Thank you, everyone.